Hey everyone, welcome back to Shattering Ceilings. It's Lauren.
And Megan, and we are here today to talk about the void. Dun, dun,
Ooh.
dun.
We need to add on some music back there. I feel for
I
that
know. It's
one.
almost Halloween. I feel like it needs to
It
be a little
is
like dark
almost
and creepy.
Halloween. Yeah. So Meg, I think you introduced me to this topic. You were like, listen to this podcast, right?
Mm,
Um, and before that, let me back up. I think that we were both feeling a certain way, but we just didn't have the
yeah.
words to really describe what was happening. And then
Yeah.
you listened to this and you were like, light bulb moment, like, right? Went off
Yeah.
and you were like, this is what this is. And then you're like, listen to this. So back me up here. Like, what happened? What's the void?
Okay. So the void is the down part of the cycle, right? So we've talked about how everything happens in cycles and everything happens in seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So at the top of your circle is when everything feels expansive, things are coming together, you're seeing the fruits of your labor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's that natural descent where you get to harvest, right? Coming into that late summer, you get to harvest what you've gained in that expansion point.
Mm-hmm.
You let go of what doesn't serve you. So maybe, that's the way you're doing your social media, or like whatever it is. You've learned some lessons, you take the gems from it, you let go of all the other stuff around it. Then you
Mm-hmm.
come back to that winter, which is like the bottom of the circle. It's that deep pit. It's the think tank.
The
the
think tank. Aaron. No, I'm just gonna
inside joke. Um, that the part of life where like you don't know what's going to happen next and you feel all this stuff like growing and ruminating, and there's like this potential energy, right? Like this
Mm,
vibration that's happening. And maybe it feels heavy, maybe it feels scary, maybe it feels exciting, overwhelming, like whatever but you know something's coming and you're working on something, but
mm,
you're not seeing the fruits of your labor yet.
right. It's
So
like
that is the void.
it's like that saying, like, when nothing is happening, everything is happening. That's
Oh yeah.
basically right,
Hell yeah. That's
like what it
exactly what it
is.
is. Yeah.
So, uh, lots of things are lots of ideas, lots of vision, lots of potential and
Preparation.
possibilities, preparation. That's all going on right now. And although it's exciting, at the same time, it's like, but it's not here yet, or it's not
Right.
happening yet, right?
Right. It's like you're at the beginning of the race, right? Like if you've ever seen somebody run track, their butts are up, right? They've got their feet in those little things. And like you can just see the engines are revving, but they can't go yet until the thing drops or
That's a
they
good
say go,
one.
like whatever it
Yeah.
goes. Like it's that point where you're like, you've got everything on everything that you've been practicing, everything that you've been working
Mhm.
on. Like it's all right there, but it
Mm,
hasn't exploded
mhm.
yet.
Mhm.
And it can feel very yucky. I mean, just talking about my
Yeah.
own personal experience right now, like there are a lot of days where I'm having to remind myself that like this is an
Mhm.
important step in the process. And if I want to make that next
Yeah.
leap into that peak,
Mhm.
if I want to feel that expansion, if I want to experience that growth, like the fruits of the labor of that growth, I
Mhm.
have to put in the work here. So
Mhm.
for me, that means studying. Like, God, I hate studying. I was
Mhm.
never, my story is that I was never a good studier. I was a last minute studier,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
And now, like, ugh, I'm committing to like 3 to 4 months of studying, and I
Yeah.
can't stop the job or start the job that I thought I'd already be doing until
Mm,
I get through that. And
right.
that's requiring me to work on all this other stuff. And that's
Mhm.
just one little part of life, right? Like, I'm having to
Yeah.
break down all those crappy old stories that I carried about having testing anxiety, not being a good test taker, which is silly because
Right.
I can probably count on one hand how many tests I've actually failed in my life. But like,
Uh-huh.
mental stuff, like
Right.
stuff that holds you back, things that held me back from taking the test when I was younger.
Mhm.
And I didn't rise to the challenge then. So now, that little tiny pebble came back as a boulder. It's
Oh,
like, oh,
yeah.
bitch, you haven't been in school for 6 years. So here you go, national exam. Like
Right.
it's a void space.
So we were in a coaching container. Well, we are in a coaching container, I should say. We were in an energy work session
Mm,
yesterday.
yeah.
And she said, right, like during this time, all the stuff that you thought you may have handled or passed, all those maybe little t, big T, traumas or whatever,
Limiting
limiting
beliefs,
beliefs, that is when this these things, I should say, will rear their head because it's like, even though it feels like we're busy, it's more like we're busy in thought, right? Like we're
Yeah.
very like it's a very heady season, I feel like for us, right? Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, so I say ideally, like when you're in the void, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't wanna get so stuck in your head that there's no movement. So it's
Right. That's a good
having
point.
the thought,
Mm-hmm.
having like working through mentally all the stuff you
Mm-hmm.
need to, and
Mm-hmm.
making that embodied connection, making the spirit
Mm-hmm.
connection, right? Like really
Right.
melding together that mind, body,
Which is
spirit
probably what was
relationship.
missing, right?
Mhm.
Is the embodiment part, right? And I think that's where we're at, or at least that's where I'm at anyway. Like when Elise is the one who was like conducting our session, she was saying, like again, like having to do the body work to work through it. And before, like I didn't know what body work was. I had no idea. I'm still learning what this all is. And so it's interesting that now those things that maybe they're old. I mean, even like your things too, Meg, they're old
Oh, yeah.
things that are coming up. Um, and it's because we haven't fully worked through them, or we're going to a new level, a deeper
Mhm.
level of healing through, right?
Right, and we're wanting to make it like a huge jump, like leveling up our life
Mm,
and our
mhm,
lifestyle, like
mhm,
we talked about in our last episode, opening a coaching business.
mhm,
How can I support people
mm.
who are going through, something that is fearful
Right.
for them, something that a self-limiting belief, I don't think I
Mhm,
can do this if
mhm.
I haven't actually like push past that fear and work through it on
Yeah,
my own,
right.
like, this is all preparing us
Mhm,
to be better coaches, to be, for me, a better practitioner when I get into the
mhm.
treatment room, to be able to better hold space, and to also offer people tools and, like,
Yes.
practices,
Mhm,
right? Like,
mhm.
we're exploring new ways of being and new practices that are supporting us in this growth.
Mhm.
Um, and that doesn't this is just in the healing world, right? Like,
Right.
we wanna be coaches. This shows up all over the place. If you
Mhm,
are in, you're trying to get into a managerial position in your business, right? Or
mhm,
whatever company you work for, there are things you have to change about what you're doing
mhm.
in whatever position you're at now. Say you're an associate, right? That's a buzzword that sounds right. Because it's something I've never done. But and you wanna step into that manager position.
Uh-huh.
Are you sharing ideas with,
Mhm.
the execs, so whatever. Are you dressing for the part? Are you
Yeah.
carrying the confidence
Who are
of
you
having that
becoming?
part?
Right.
Right. What are the conversations you're having with your coworkers? If you wanna manage them, if you wanna be in a leadership position,
Mhm,
are you fostering relationships with your coworkers so that when you get into that leadership position, you can lead effectively because
mhm.
you have rapport, you
Right.
have trust, you have all these things in the employees that you're working with. Like,
Mhm.
all of these are ways that you can grow.
Right.
Right,
And
and that's part of the void. You might not see the fruits of those labors. You may be like, "Oh my god, I'm working my ass off, and I
right.
got passed over for a promotion."
Right. It's the energy too, about like what kind of energy are you bringing into the room, the situation, just the energy
Right.
that you're carrying from day to day. I think
Right,
that's
Jocelyn talked
important.
about that, like,
Yeah.
playing in the void rather than getting overwhelmed, rather than getting
Mhm.
bogged down, like, knowing that it's all part of the game.
Right. And that's what I had to do because I mean, we've talked about this before. Well, you and I have. Like there's so many things I feel like I have to do and so many things to learn, not just
Mhm.
like just not the mental part, but like with the coaching business, right? Starting that. Um I was like getting overwhelmed because I'm like, I have to do blah, 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 and I don't know how to do it and all these things. And then I think I listened to probably one of Jocelyn's either podcast or it was our coaching container, like our Voxer group. And it something just like switched to me where it's like, no, like it's not overwhelmed. You're not overwhelmed. Like you have abundance. And it's just there's a lot of abundance there. And it's
Right, it's
like
full, it's
it's
exciting.
full, right? It's exciting. And I don't have to do it all at once. And the only pressure that is there is the pressure I'm putting on myself. No one else is giving me this
Yeah.
pressure, but that's just my design. And thankfully I have, Meg who's like, we don't have to do it tomorrow or we don't have to get this done by next week. Like, let's, sift through this and and thank God I have that because I do tend to go 110 miles an hour and I want everything done now. Um, but
Mhm.
but yeah, like so I've just been really focusing on, again, like, no, it's abundance, not overwhelm. And that has
Mhm.
really, I mean, I feel like how I'm showing up this week compared to last week is different, you know?
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, I think we were both in different places last week, but
Agreed.
we had each other to, like, work through some stuff, right? And we talked about this on an earlier episode, the reframe, right?
Mhm.
Lauren is reframing how she's holding something. I was listening to a Danielle podcast this morning, the one
Mhm.
I mentioned to you, and she talks about selfishness.
Mhm.
So thank you, Danielle McCleary, for this little gem. I cannot take credit for it.
Mhm.
She said, there's negative stories about being selfish. If someone tells you that you're selfish, you're not going to
Mhm.
take that in and be like, oh yeah, thanks, I am. Um, because we've been told that, like, we have to put other people's needs in front of our own. And the
Yeah.
definition of selfishness is putting your own needs
Mhm.
before others. And we're learning, I feel like this is coming up all over the place, no matter what
Mhm.
world you run in,
Mhm.
that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You have
Mhm.
to take care of yourself in order to take care of others, right? You
Mhm.
are much better at tending to others when you are pouring from a full cup.
Mhm.
So, changing the way that we think about things, right? Lauren can feel overwhelmed or she can feel excited with abundance.
Mhm.
What feels better in your
Mhm.
body? You
Right.
know,
And the
selfishness, yucky, or selfishness is self love. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
all about the way that you think about things.
Right. And I think, again, it's just switching that perspective. It's switching those words around. And it's your choice. Like, you get to choose
Yes.
how you look at it. And I
Yeah.
think, the other thing that we're really working on, um, in this void right now is being seen and heard, which I know that sounds
Yeah.
crazy because we literally have a podcast, but there's still that fear for, I know for myself, and I'm pretty sure Meg too, where, we're working on how we look at how we're seen, or how we care about that, right? And just really kind
Yeah.
of removing, like, shedding those layers, and just, like, being okay with showing up as we are, as our
Yeah.
authentic selves, because we want that. We want to show up authentically. We want to show up as ourselves, and it's scary all at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, I think we had this conversation the other day, like, with posting on social media, for example.
Mhm.
That's something with the business that we want to be in, with the
Mhm.
world, like the life that we want to build for ourselves. It
Mhm.
requires a social media presence. And it requires, like, us getting a little polarizing, right? Like,
Mhm.
I know I have a story that I am scared to post things because I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want anybody to feel left out. Like, there's all these
Same.
things that keep me from showing up as authentically myself, not in a bad way. Those are all good things to want, like,
Right.
yes, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings purposely. And shifting that story to, like, I'm not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. I've heard
Right.
it before. I'd rather be someone's shot of whiskey than somebody's cup of tea. Like,
Mm,
that's how
that's
I
a
wanna
good
show up
one.
in the world. I wanna be a shot of fucking whiskey. I wanna
Oh.
be that mic drop, like, thunderous,
Mhm.
life-changing,
Right.
like, influence for somebody, because that's what I crave in my life.
Right.
Those are the people that I seek out in my life. I wanna
Yes.
offer that value to somebody else.
Those
I cannot
thought-provoking
do that.
people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can't do that if you're worried about
No.
everybody liking, because not everybody's gonna like it, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and
But
and
that's a
it's
huge thing.
and those people that are, very conscious of not hurting feelings, like, those people don't, they rarely make a huge impact, right? Like, it's the people that are challenging what you see or hear or think. Those are the people that are really making an impact.
Absolutely. I
'Cause
mean, look at, like, the big, Mel Robbins, Tony Robbins, Ed Milet. Like, think of big, like, people that you would sit and listen to their TEDx. You don't listen to it because you're sitting there the whole time like, "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
right.
that way. I do that." It's like you hear them say something, they, like, drop that knowledge
Yeah.
bomb, and you're like, "Fuck.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
like,
Damn, I needed to hear that." Right? Like,
yeah.
it makes
Mhm.
me feel uncomfortable because it means I'm gonna have to change something about the way I'm
Yes.
doing things, but
Yes.
I know that it is going to increase the value that I can add in my own life, right? It's gonna increase the
Mhm.
quality of life that I have. Like, those people have to step on toes, and you can do it in not a malicious way.
And with that too, like, this brings up, like, again, we're not gonna get fully into this, but, like, the whole, like, pivoting thing too. And
Mhm.
this is something that I think, well, I know we've talked about, like, Dane Cook was on Ed Milet's show, which freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally judged going into it. I was like, what? He's a
I
fucking
you
comedian.
did
Like,
judge it. No, just
I know. I totally did. I was like, okay, I'll listen, but
is he
what's
gonna
he
be a
going to talk about?
douchebag? I'm like, no,
Right.
Meg, he's gonna be really good.
It was incredible.
It was incredible. And he talks about like, you know, one of the fears I have is like on social media, like changing things up or looking like I'm too
Yeah.
all over the place or whatever. And it's like, here's the thing. This is who I am. It's
Hmm.
totally who I've always been. I may not always say it, you may not always see it, but like things are always changing. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I'm not like my character doesn't change, my values don't change, but like what I'm doing, my thoughts, like I'm very open and like I change and I grow and like most of us should be. So I think like it's we're afraid to put it out there, or at least I'm afraid to put it out there, but it's something that we really should be growing, right? And like
Totally.
not afraid of showing that yeah, you know, I used to think this way and now I'm really opened up to this now. Like no,
Right. I
that's
learned something. I'm
yeah,
implementing those lessons,
right.
and now I know life to be this way.
Yes. And like that's a good thing. So like you're going to see very much the whole journey of this transformation, not only on this podcast, but if you follow us, you get into like, you know, coaching with us, whatever, like you're going to learn alongside of us too. Because
Hmm.
learning is like you've heard, I know Ed Milet says this, like, school's never out, you know, for the expert or for the business person or for the successful. Like it's school's never out. You're always going to
Right.
be learning,
Right.
you
And
know?
that goes for everything. We just choose to like focus on the realm of personal transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the thing. If you're an expert, a leading expert in your field, and you're a scientist, you didn't discover something 20 years ago or do a project 20 years ago and then ride on that. You
Right.
continue to learn, you continue to
Mm-hmm.
experiment. Experiments fail all the fucking time. I worked
Mm-hmm.
in research. It is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it takes time. It takes pivoting. It takes going back to the drawing board like
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again and learning from each of those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're gonna see us do. And it's scary to step into that, to let
Mm-hmm.
people see your mistakes, let people
Right.
see your edges, let people see, you know, the messy parts of you. Like my Instagram is very boring, I guess you could say, because I just randomly post like once or twice a year a picture of my kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it's scary to make that shift into self promotion,
Mm-hmm.
into sharing my
Yeah.
daily routine, into talking about the way that I live my daily life. But like, why? That's my platform.
Right.
That's
And
my little corner of the world. Why not show people what I've
and
got?
that's how you learned, right? You learned by
Yeah.
watching other people self-discover, you know, promote share what they're learning, share what they're eating, share
Mhm.
like because then you're like, oh, that looks interesting. Let me go look at that. Right. And that's really
Absolutely.
again, it all goes back to like we are always learning from each other. And so again, it's like that collective. We just need to do it together and be and just realize that it's okay. Like I think that's my big thing is like it's okay to change. It's okay to show up different next week, next year, next month, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let yourself be the butterfly. So this is a really, you know, silly little analogy that I've seen a couple times lately, and I have been in my mind like reminding myself to be the caterpillar. You have a caterpillar, right? It doesn't go into its cocoon and just like lay there and sprout wings and come out a butterfly. It literally turns into goo,
Ugh.
right?
Yeah.
Ooey gooey, like think like brown, sticky, stretchy, yucky, snotty goo, right?
Mm.
That's the void. That
Mm.
caterpillar has to turn into goo in order to transform into this brilliant fucking butterfly that
Mm-hmm.
can now fly. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like if you want to fly, you have to get into the goo first. So enjoy the goo, dance in the goo, stretch in the goo, roll around in it,
Mm-hmm.
see how much you can attain while in the goo, so
Mm-hmm.
that when you turn into that butterfly, your wings are that much more brilliant.
Mm.
Your
I love that.
flight, like, you know what I mean? Like, just like imagine the possibilities.
Embracing it.
That's part of, yes, that's part of being in the
Mm-hmm.
goo. It's like holding that space of possibility, that
Mm-hmm.
benevolence, that ability to see all the things, you know, the general standing on top of the mountain looking down over everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But just love it. Cause why the fuck not?
it's a part of life, you know,
It
and it's
is.
just part of the journey. And like, you know, I think the other reminder is to just to like as much as possible remain present. You know, like it's great to look
Yeah.
forward to things, and that can also create like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough or I'm not there yet or whatever. Like if you can focus on being present and really soaking in like the moment and what's happening, and you know, it feels a little easier that way. At least for
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we leave today, guys,
Mhm.
I want to leave you with a gift that we were given through our coaching container this week. So credit to Elise Basine. Um, if you are listening to this and maybe recognize like, oh, maybe I'm in the void right now, right? And you're maybe stuck in all the things that you're not doing correctly or that haven't come to fruition yet.
Mhm.
I want you to write down a list of your wins. What are some ways that you are having wins, that you are seeing gains, that you're seeing transformation in your life right now? Though it could be something so small, like I wake up in the morning and I drink a glass of water. Like I have a glass of water sitting on the side of my bed so that I sit up and take a sip of that rather than hitting the snooze button and sleeping for 10 more minutes. That's a fucking win. That's
Mhm.
changing your routine. That's changing the way that
Mhm.
you show up in the world. And
Mhm.
that will domino effect in other places of your life. So
Mhm.
write down 5 wins and then share them with us.
Awesome. Till next time, guys. See you later.
Bye.